Greetings everybody, and welcome back to another video. I apologise in advance for it being a talking head video, but to try and do this out in the landscape is very, very problematic because of the amount of gear that I'm going to have all around me. So I've elected to do this inside because simply that's actually the simplest way of doing it. So today I want to talk about the challenge that I've had with lens choices for my Sigma fpL. So the Sigma fpL is an L mount camera. That's what it is. And when I purchased the camera, here's my camera here, I purchased it with a 28-70 f2.8 contemporary L mount lens from Sigma. Really nice lens, lovely piece of glass, absolutely no complaints whatsoever. At the time of purchasing the camera, this is September 2021, there are 27 native Sigma L mount lenses, and there are also 12 Sigma Canon EF lenses that are noted as being compatible with the FP system when used with one of these things, which is it's called an MC-21 adapter. Basically, it's an adapter that goes from Canon EF to L mount, which is fine. And in fact, I've actually tried this adapter with quite a few Canon EF lenses, and they've all worked there to some extent, which has been really, really handy. And you know, anybody that knows anything about the range of Canon EF lenses for their full frame cameras, you will know that their range is absolutely, absolutely massive. So, if I was to go to Wex Photo here in the UK, wexphoto.co.uk, and I just keyed in L mount lenses, did a search on L mount lenses, I would find 81 of them. And they're a mixture of makes, so there'd be Panasonic, Leica, Sigma, obviously, a company called, I think it's called Laowa, Laowa, forgive me if I've said that name wrong, and Lens Baby. And their prices range from 5.5k at the top end, those will be the Leicas, to 179 UK pounds at the bottom end. Now, when I first looked at expanding my lens choices beyond the initial purchase of a 28-70, I initially looked at the range of Canon EF lenses simply because they're cheap and they're plentiful. Especially if you buy sort of, the Mark 1 variants of the lenses. I shopped around for an MC-21 adapter and managed to get one of those at a reasonable price, which is a good place to start. And then what I actually did was I bought this adapter and then I tried it with a mate of mine's Canon EF lenses, and they all worked, which was kind of giving me a warm and fuzzy feeling with regard to using the adapter, and also a warm and fuzzy feeling with regard to buying Canon EF lenses. What I actually ended up buying, sorry, I just needed to pause for a moment. So my first purchase was this. This is an EF 28-135 image stabilized lens. It's a Canon lens. It's quite an old lens now. But when I used to photograph Formula 1, this was a lens I used a lot, and it worked perfectly well for Formula 1. And because it's got image stabilization, at least it gave me that option if I wanted to use it with this lens, which is superb. I also managed to pick up this is a Canon 70-200 f4. Again, second hand, reasonable price, excellent quality. I think there were just some marks around the tripod collar, and that was about it. And in combination with the 28 to 70, 28 to 135, 28 to 70, f2.8, and this, I felt I could confidently head out into the landscape with this combination of lenses, and that would be it. I would be happy. And certainly when I use these lenses during the autumn, I had no issues whatsoever. My first challenge though with using these lenses, these two Canon lenses, so the 28 to 135 and the 70 to 200, was that if I used the manual focus option on these lenses, rather than the camera automatically zooming in on the focus point and allowing me to critically fine-tune the focus, they just did nothing. The manual focus ring obviously did its focus, but I didn't get that zoom in with regard to manual focus. Now, I went back to the manual to investigate what was happening. Maybe it was a compatibility issue with the adapter, but I found out that there was an option actually to invoke the manual focus zoom manually. Just push a button on the back of the camera. Let me just put that lens down there. So it's actual fact, it's that button there right in the middle of the dial. Push that and you automatically get the zoom manual focus zoom in. I could do what I needed to do and then push it again, and then it would go back to normal. Great. So I found a way to work around that. And there was even a bit of me that thought, what, with a 28 to 135 and a 70 to 200, would I even need the 28 to 70 L mount? Could I just actually survive with these two? Now, my second challenge was, this is an f4 lens, which is fine, right, for normal landscapes. But I looked to see whether I could get a 70 to 200 2.8. And the reason why I wanted a 2.8 was for things like bluebells, wildflowers, wild poppies, things like that, where you really want to be able to isolate the background. I don't use, even with my Olympus system, I don't use 2.8 lenses that often, but there are occasions when I do use them. So in addition to this, which was a general purpose 70 to 200, I looked for a 2.8 EF lens, and I managed to find one. I found a Tamron 70 to 200 2.8 in EF mount, clearly making the assumption that if it's an EF fit lens, then it'll work perfectly acceptably using the adapter. However, it didn't. The lens itself worked okay, but as soon as I switched the stabilization on, the lens just completely locked up, and then the autofocus stopped working as well. Now, I actually checked the lens. I tried it on my mate's. He's got a 5D Mark IV, and it worked perfectly. So there was nothing wrong with the lens. It's some sort of compatibility issue between the EF to L mount adapter and the lens itself, which was a little bit disappointing. Now, I have subsequently got a Sigma 70 to 200 f2.8, and that's absolutely fine. That works perfectly. So I don't have that lens with me, but I do actually now have at least have a 2.8 option. But I did learn a lesson that not all EF lenses work with this adapter, which was a little bit of a learn. My next challenge with regard to lenses was an occasion where I went to the seaside, particularly stormy day, with waves crashing against rocks and so on and so forth, which is fantastic 70 to 200 type territory. And I took my Sigma along because I wanted to give it a try in those sorts of conditions. So I was using this lens with the adapter attached to the camera, and immediately I started to struggle, and I struggled because this lens, the autofocus on this lens through the adapter, was ridiculously slow. I hadn't really noticed it out in the landscape, because out in the landscape I tend to use most of my lenses on manual focus. But when you're tracking waves across the sea and crashing on rocks, you tend to lean on the autofocus. And this just, through the adapter, it just wasn't doing it, to be perfectly honest. It was, I think the phrase is focus hunting. It would focus in and out. And of course, by the time that's happened, what you wanted to photograph has gone. But what I did notice was that later in the day, we moved round to the beach and I swapped back to the 28 to 70 L mount lens. Autofocus was just like that. And it did make me think, okay, if I'm going to rely on quick autofocus, maybe using lenses through the adapter isn't necessarily such a good idea. So I did a little bit of research and I managed to pick up, so this is the Sigma 100 to 400. It's an f5 to 6.3, sorry, but it's an L mount lens and it's stabilized. And it's got a host of other functions and features as well. And I've been using this lens for a few days and it's absolutely superb. Lovely piece of glass. Yes, I know it's not the fastest piece of glass on the planet, but out in the landscape, generally, I mean, lots of landscapers use this at f4 quite happily. Okay, so this is f5 to 6.3. Maybe a little bit of a compromise, but I'm really loving the range, so it's 100 to 400, and I've not come across a situation yet where the f-stop has been an issue for me. And certainly, if I was to go back to the seaside and track waves, coming onto the shore, then this would be my weapon of choice. So I have a 28 to 70 and a 100 to 400, both in L mount. At the wider end of the equation, which is the one that I've been playing with, the Sigma options at the wider end are a little bit limited. You can get them, but they tend to be there in the art range rather than the contemporary. So they're bigger and heavier, and they're also a lot more expensive. So I went back to another lens that I've used before. This is the Canon 17 to 40 f4. Lovely piece of glass. I've used it for years when I was in my Formula One days, taking pictures of cars in the pit lane. And this is the only lens that I use through the adapter. Autofocus speed, when you're using a lens like this, isn't quite so critical. And like I say, most of the time in the landscape, I'm actually in manual focus rather than autofocus. So I've not encountered those autofocus hunting challenges using this wide angle lens in the same way that I did using the 70 to 200 f4. So at the minute, right now, I have a 17 to 40, a 28 to 70, which is attached to the camera, and then I've got the 100 to 400. And I have currently, I'm actually in the Lake District right now, and I've been using these three lenses for the last 2.5 days without problem. I know that there's a focal range gap between 70 and 100, but as I've said before, I've got 61 megapixels to play with. If I really feel that I'm in a scene where I need to fill that gap, then I know I can crop, and I know I can crop without losing too much quality. So what I've elected to do is actually live. I can't hold the 17 to 40, it's sitting here. I've elected to live with these three lenses in my bag in the landscape. The 28 to 70 f2.8, that will stay at home, and I will use that in bluebell season or in the poppy season, or I'll probably use it during the autumn as well, to single out individual leaves and use that 2.8 function. But other than that, it will sit on the shelf. Right now today, with my Olympus kit, I have a 40 to 150 f2.8 that also sits on the shelf until I get to those times of year. So it's actually no different. I will probably hang on to this lens for a wee bit longer. I don't think I'll do anything with that because I kind of want to prove to myself that I get the quality I want from this lens. Yeah, the jury's still out a little bit on this one, but I'm thoroughly enjoying using it, put it like that. The one I will probably part with is the 28-135 Canon EF, because I think the combination of the 28-70 and this one probably covers it, and covers it at a much faster speed and also much better quality. So that's my current lens story and current dilemma and some of the challenges that I've had. So yeah, I wanted to set this down so that when people see me using these lenses, they're not thinking, oh, hang on a minute, what's going on here? So I hope it's been useful just telling that story. And also, I hope by sort of sharing some of those challenges that will help people with their own lens choices, and help them in order to make a decision. So that's it for now. I'm going to play with these 3 lenses out in the landscape. I will let you know in another video how I get on and whether that combination actually needs to change. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe. And until my next video, stay well and stay safe. And I'll try very hard not to spend any more money on lenses. See you soon. Take care.